live stream. We are going to be discussing the Twins rotation this evening. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This is Tom Froming. TF Twins is the channel. We are going to get right into it. If you're watching this on a replay, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. We're going to keep this thing flowing. This is going to be a well-paced show here. I'll give you a little taste of what we got coming. Going to be talking about some of these baseball savant sliders with some of these guys. We're going to be going and checking out some projections at Fangraphs. We are going to be going and checking out Pitcher List. They dropped Pitcher List 8 today. Big deal. They upgrade the site every year, and there's some cool stuff in there, including Nick Pollock's top 300 starting pitchers for fantasy baseball, which is going to be a topic that we'll discuss as it relates to the Twins. But as you can see here right now, I've got the comments up. So if you're here live, don't be shy, say hi. And, we're going to be talking about the rotation, but feel free to bring up any questions you may have that are unrelated or get some side conversations going. I always like to see that. So, and bring a beverage if you'd like. Good evening. All right. So to start with, I think, hello. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Appreciate it. I actually think we're going to jump into that. We'll jump into that baseball savant sliders and just kind of bring that up. It's just a page that I put together to sort of have something more interesting to see than my face, which is always good with video. These have been they're great. They're great. These are so in vogue these days because they do pack a lot of punch. They have a ton of data on them. They don't tell the whole story. I will say that, and we'll kind of talk about some other stuff. But if you want to talk about kind of where these guys ranked last year in terms of, some of their under the hood stats, this is the way to look at it. I think, kind of the guy really sticks out to me as the most sort of interesting. As far as how these looks are Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray, he had a weird year last year. He had a very strange year. Somehow gave up a lot of damage, but didn't. Gave up a lot of hard hit balls, but it didn't seem to hurt him that much. I'm very curious to see what is to come from Sonny Gray this upcoming season. He is a guy whose kind of best pitch has been elusive the last couple of years. It's kind of changed a couple times. I think his best pitch last year was his curveball, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's kind of slid around a bit. But again, just we'll leave these up here. We had a comment, great top prospects video. Thank you so much. A lot of good outpouring of positivity on that one, which felt really good. That was a ton of work. So glad to see people are enjoying that. It's really fun to be able to help bring those guys into life for people who haven't had a chance to see them yet. So I really enjoyed putting that one together. But again, we have up here the baseball savant sliders for the primary 4 starting pitchers for the Twins. And of course, Kenta Maeda is penciled into the rotation for now. And Bailey Ober is in the mix as well. And, we had guys like Louis Varland and Simeon Woods Richardson debut last season. Toadvine79 also says, LOL, Pablo has a great smile. I think all these guys are doing, I'll give him like a 5 out of 5 on the headshot, except for our boy down in the bottom left there, Tyler Mahle. He's got some work to do, Tyler. Well, let's turn that frown upside down for 2023, buddy. And, we're going to take a look at this, but the kind of big thing that I want to, I was thinking about this earlier today, and it was sort of, if somebody who, wasn't super familiar with baseball kind of wanted me to try to explain how this rotation is shaping out. I think saying like they have 4, like number 2 or 2-3 caliber starting pitchers is fair to say with those 4 guys. Then Kenta Maeda, we'll get to an opinion that really is encouraging to me from a pitching mind that I highly respect in a sec. But I don't even have like a half glass full or a half glass empty opinion with Maeda. It's more of just like the glass is there. I'm not sure what's in it. I'm not sure what's going to be in it. I'm not sure if I'm thinking that it's going to be half full or half empty at this point. Like, he might be the number one guy in spring training I'm most interested to hear about, like his velo and stuff. By a traditional timeline, we should have seen Kenta Maeda last year. Really, he should have been recovered. So that kind of gives me some pause and some worry. Why didn't he make it back? He's getting a little bit up there in age, of course, for a baseball player. So there's some concern there. I see Liam from Talking Twins on YouTube showed up. He's got a great channel. Check that out. Just skyrocketing. Guy's going to be miles beyond me in subscribers before too long. So jump on that train while the bandwagons got lots of room. And another way, if you want to kind of drill it down further, I think, it's an interesting rotation because I don't think that the Twins have any of the top 30 starting pitchers. I don't think any of these guys would rank in the top 30. And we'll look at a couple of things that will support that, which, there's 30 teams in baseball. That's not really good if you don't have one of the top 30 starting pitchers. But I think you could argue 4 for sure. Maybe even all 5 of them are within the top 60. So it's like they have just a ton of guys in like the 31 to 60 range, or maybe 70. But, it's a ton of like number 2, 3 guys. And man, that sure beats, that might not sound real sexy, when you put it that way. But boy, does that sure beat, looking at Dylan Bundy and Chris Archer and Jay Happ and Matt Shoemaker. And, we can even we go back further. We get into some nastier names than that. So, I think it's fair, it's fair to sort of pump the brakes a little bit in terms of hype. I think we can get excited, but it's not as if this is like a top 10 rotation. But for the Twins, if Twins fans know, and every baseball team doesn't feel like it has enough pitching. For the Twins, it really has been the case for years and years and years now. But I really feel good about this rotation. Josiah's asking about Jordan Balazovic's health status. I mean, the guy pitched pretty much all year last year. So I know he had a knee problem that kind of, we're basically hoping that knee was an excuse for why Balazovic didn't pitch as well last year. But that never really, I think he did have some time spent on the IL, but he still made, I think, over 20 starts. I don't know anything right now on Jordan. Another question about Dobnak. Dobnak, he's off the 40-man roster. He's kind of out of sight, out of mind. He's been passed up by a lot of guys, but he's certainly a guy in the system. I think, you could envision him kind of coming up and being more of like an emergency starter this year. There's obviously not a spot carved out for him. At this point, he's going to have to earn his way back up, but they're going to go through so many pitchers throughout the year. We're going to see so much turnover. And I want to mention this guy before we get too far into it, because I'm going to forget about him because I do it every time I talk about the rotation. But Chris Paddack, we probably can expect to see at some point this upcoming season. It probably won't be later. And, who knows at that point, maybe they'll only bring him back as a reliever and then ramp him back up next year. I don't know. But he's just another guy to keep in mind that is still in the organization. He's recovering from Tommy John. So it'll be interesting. At this point, we'll talk about leadoff hitter. We'll talk about that more in depth another time. But I will mention, Robert, I'm not a huge lineup composition guy. I don't spend a whole lot of time fussing about that. Obviously you can optimize things the way a lineup is built. And there's kind of a better or a worse way to do it, but I don't think it makes nearly as big of an impact as some people might. Oh, who's the Colome Pagan of 2023? We'll talk about that with the bullpen. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with the bullpen. I think how we're going to do this is it's basically live stream season for me right now. We knocked out that big old prospect, big video, that big project that I worked on. That's out of the way, and we're not quite to spring. So this is like a great time. I think every week I'm going to do one of these live streams, and we'll kind of tackle another aspect of the team. So we'll talk about the bullpen maybe next week. Another thing I want to mention is I felt good about starting with the rotation because I don't think the Twins are done making moves. I really don't. They might not do anything major, but I feel like this was a good place to start because I feel like the rotation is the least likely place anything might change. And then, like, the minute I thought that yesterday when I was scheduling this, I thought, at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if they traded Sonny Gray. That would be totally. That would be sort of similar to when they dealt Taylor Rogers like the day before opening day last year. This organization really doesn't like to hold on to guys till they reach free agency. So they really like and the guys in their last year, they kind of like to trade those guys away. So I think it's unlikely. That the Twins would trade Sonny Gray, but I just wanted to float that out there. I would suspect that the rotation is set. Do the Twins still have Drew Strotman? No. He was placed on waivers at the end of the season, I think, and somebody claimed him. So he's not around, but he was probably only going to be a reliever anyway. A guy who just kind of didn't get it all back in terms of command after Tommy John. He was one of the guys acquired in the Nelson Cruz trade with Tampa Bay, for anybody who was struggling to place that name. So again, just going to pull this up here. I might pull this up a few times basically to also help transition from one thing to another, to be honest. Getting the live streaming feel back. If any of you guys saw my attempt at live streaming after the Luis Arraez trade, that was a disaster. I think nobody's saying anything, so I'm assuming things are going better this time. But I tried to do a little bit of a different setup. I had to improvise a bit, and oh my goodness, did that not work out? And everybody who showed up was so nice about it too. Everybody was so nice about it. But I think we're having a better setup this time around. All right, but again, I said we were going to kind of do some show and tell and look at crazy things on the internet together. So let's get into that. Let's see. We're over at Fangraphs, and what I want to do here is take a look at the projections. And again, that's kind of going to help us contextualize a bit this rotation. And that's not what I want. We will pull up just the Twins. Starting pitchers. There we go. All right, and these are the depth charts projections over at Fangraphs. And again, like this representation here of the WAR projected for each of these guys, I think that really represents how I view them as well. Like it's really tough for me to rank these four guys in particular. And that's reflected here. They have Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez, both at 2.3 WAR, Mahle at 2.2 WAR, and Sonny Gray at 2.1 WAR. So basically, incredibly even on projections on all four of these guys. Kenta Maeda at a 1.5, Bailey Ober at a 0.9. Again, yeah, don't forget about Bailey Ober. Was a big part of the rotation last year, obviously when healthy, but only, that's sort of been the problem with Bailey Ober. He hasn't been able to stay healthy too much. So that is the projected for the Twins rotation. Let's see here. There's another spot I was going to go here, but we may need to go over to pitcher list first, because there was also some stuff I want to take a look at over there. Yeah, let's do that. Or that here. No. Okay. We're not going to mess around with that too much. There we go. And just a moment here while I pull that up. And again, so Pitcher List is a site, if you're not familiar with it, it's mostly geared toward fantasy baseball, I would say. But I think we can still capture a lot of information, capture a lot of data that's useful and takes that are useful out of this. And again, just today, actually, they released the new version of their site. This is headed by Nick Pollock. If you know Alex Fast, he's another kind of big figure in the pitcher list world. Guys who do great work. Nick Pollock is a great pitching mind and devotes just a ton of effort and energy into scouting pitching, learning about pitching, watching pitching, talking about pitching. A guy who lives a lot as well, and he gives his top 300 starting pitchers of 2023. And I wanted to go through and just find our Twins on here and talk about that concept a little deeper, that they have all of these twos and what that might mean for the Twins, and also just kind of show you guys around here a little bit and talk about some of these rankings and their player pages as well. So the top Twins pitcher ranked on here, which again, I think is just a crapshoot on who. I think you could pull up 5 different resources and you might have, 3 or 4 different guys who end up on top. But it's Joe Ryan at 38th. So again, 30 teams in baseball, you'd hope that the Twins would have a guy in the top 30. They don't. Joe Ryan's 38th. He's the top ranked Twins on Nick's. And now I do want to mention too, we do have to sort of take into account that this is based on rankings for a 5x5 12 team fantasy baseball league. So it's not just like a straight up ranking of MLB. But I think we can still look at it in that way, that, it translates fairly well to if you were to try to rank out pitchers without a fantasy aspect to it. And the other thing I would add with the Twins rotation that is kind of a bummer, and maybe this is more of my thinking, because Joe Ryan did tweak with his slider some at the end of last year, and it's pretty interesting. He's trying to get more of that sweeper slider that's really in vogue these days, that has more vertical movement on it. And, that could really unlock something on Joe Ryan. The other thing is I honestly don't see a whole lot of potential for any of the Twins starting pitchers to elevate themselves up into that sort of top 30. If there's anybody in Orion, but a lot of stuff metrics don't really love his pitches. But he is the guy that came up on top. And it's funny that right after him, literally the next guy, is Pablo Lopez. Chris is talking about Maeda. Well, this is Nick's ranking on Maeda is very encouraging, in my opinion. So Pablo Lopez was 39th, and a lot of Nick writes about him is, focusing on the positives and, he's not worried about, Pablo Lopez had a really bad end to last year. Nick is not really worried about that. Kind of talks about some of his strengths. Obviously, the changeup. Pablo Lopez's changeup is just tremendous. But he also does a great job at getting strikes outside of the zone. I think that's sort of a secret sauce stat for Pablo Lopez that he's so good at. He gets back to chase pitches. So those guys both cracked the top. And then we don't have to go too much farther, if my memory serves me correctly, to find the next Twin, but it might not be who you're expecting it to be. It is Kenta Maeda. Kenta Maeda at 53. Kenta Maeda above Kodai Senga, the guy who came over from Japan, got a nice contract from the Mets. So I really respect Nick's opinions and his thoughts on pitching. Now, he does say that, in the context of a 12-team league, again, that's sort of the thing we have to take into account with this ranking. If a guy this late doesn't work out in a fantasy team, you can just cut him. But he likes him as, kind of a flyer, and he really believes more in that we could see a 2020 version of Kenta Maeda. Maybe not that exact version, but 2021 was rough. Obviously he got injured, but Kenta Maeda was not pitching that well in 2021. Nick seems to be a little bit more inclined to give him a partial free pass, since he's kind of under the impression that Kenta Maeda probably wasn't healthy while he was pitching most of that year. He was probably partially injured for part of that year. And, if you look at it that way, and if you are, I talked about, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out what the glass is. There's a glass there. I don't know. Is it half empty, half full? I don't know. It's glass. Nick is definitely taking a glass half full approach toward Maeda and kind of thinks that he can get back to a similar, maybe not that 2020 version of Maeda, but maybe back to kind of what he was usually with the Dodgers, if I'm kind of reading through the context here. And that would be a huge development for the Twins. Obviously, again, he's not going to push the Twins, I don't think. He was an ace pretty much in 2020. Ridiculous. I think that's beyond expectation. That's beyond expectation. But I gotta tell you, this really got me intrigued to see that Nick had him this high up and actually above. He has him as the third Twins starting pitcher ranked here. So I mean, if we can think about that, Maeda's just the fifth guy. He's just penciled in as the fifth guy. So you can almost kind of apply this take on a fantasy team as a take on the Twins rotation. Like, it's house money. It's house money. If this guy doesn't work out, Bailey Ober's right there. And of course, Bailey Ober's struggled to rack up innings. And Louis Varland pitched really well late in the year last year. Obviously, coming up and make a handful of starts and like going through the league a couple times are two very different things. You can't just you can't extrapolate out those numbers and expect a guy to continue to do well. Sometimes when you get a book on you, it becomes more difficult. But it's not as if the Twins don't have plan B options behind Maeda. And we can think about this in this kind of positive light. And maybe the Twins have 5 number 2s, and there are most rotations for competing teams. I'm getting some weird noises. I hope those aren't coming back for you guys. Oh, it might be some ads on here. My bad. Might be getting some audio from ads kicking on these websites. If that happens, let me know. If you guys are hearing weird sound effects or something. Sounds like a movie trailer trying to come through. The Twins 2023 rotation starring Kenta Maeda. All right. Maybe we'll take this off for now then. One sec. Well, actually, that's just real quick. Because we didn't have to go too much far. Tyler Mahle was 57th, and Sonny Gray, Nick was a little worried about. He had him 64th, but still, that's 5 starting pitchers in the top 64. And the point I was trying to make was most contending teams do have at least one starting pitcher who is projected for like more than 2.3 WAR or whatever we saw from Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez. So most of the competitive teams starting rotations, the top of the rotation, they have a top of the guy. They have a top guy. The Twins don't have that. But if you look at their 3, 4, 5, or even 6, 7, 8, I think there is a lot more there than on some of these other teams, which is weird to say. Obviously, them trading Luis Arraez for Pablo Lopez was kind of a game changer in that regard. They already had basically a full rotation, and now they've added a guy who's a super legit starting pitcher. I totally understand some concern about his shoulder history. Totally get the concern about the way he finished last year. He is primarily a 2-pitch pitcher, but when it's a fastball changeup, a 4-seam fastball changeup as good as his are, and he does have 3 different fastballs. He throws a sinker and a cutter, some too, but they're not nearly as good. So it was a big upgrade. And it lengthened the rotation, which was huge. So I think the Twins, their starting rotation is set up very well for a 162 game season. Knock on all the wood. Because there's never enough pitching. Ever. So, but the Twins are in a great shape. Jordan Balazovic, will he make it to the big leagues this year? I mean, he's kind of the same situation as last year. He's on the 40-man rotation roster. Excuse me. He's on the 40-man roster. He's in the Twins 40-man rotation somewhere. We know that much. If they had 40-man in the rotation, Jordan Balazovic would be in there. But he needs to pitch better. He was a disaster last year. He did start to pitch better at the end of the year. He had a nice finish to his season. So I think that's a nice end to it. But I mean, right now, I think he's going to be, if you ask me what I think his career is going to end up be, I would say he's going to end up in the bullpen. Yeah, Chris, so last year the Twins really did have a 40-man rotation, basically. I mean, most years they do. And it's funny, there's even, I don't know that we're going to get this deep this year again, but Aaron Sanchez is back and Derek Rodriguez is back too. So some of those, former big leaguers who have big league experience, even those guys are still around. And again, Dobnak is still around, so hopefully, again, fingers crossed, hopefully we see a ton of starts by the top 6 guys. We're going to include Bailey Ober in there. We know the reality of the situation. Yes, the Twins have a new trainer, and, there's a lot of positivity around that and a lot of optimism around how that's going to impact things. And, hopefully that really does come to fruition, that the Twins have fewer injuries. But we know somebody's going to go down. Somebody's going to go down for a long time. Probably somebody beyond Bailey Ober is going to be in the rotation for 2 months at least. I think I broke this down a couple of years ago, and in your top 7 starting pitchers, you can expect to spend 2 months in your rotation, I think is what the breakdown was. So we know that it's not going to be perfect, and the best laid plans. But this Twins team, and that's going to be a kind of a common thing as we run through the roster, is that the backup options, what happens if you take this guy away? The emergency plans are so much better than they've been in recent years. And that's something I really hammered home on when I previewed the Twins with Eric over at Hum Baby Baseball. He's got a channel that's league-wide. He focuses a bit on the Giants, but he definitely league-wide. He's previewing all 30 teams. And that's just something that kept coming up in that conversation, was how much better the emergency plans, the backup plans are for the Twins this year than they've been in years past. I don't think anybody asking about Pagan. I can't believe you're asking in good faith. You know damn well Emilio Pagan's still on the team. Come on. We got Bob in here trying to stir up troubles. What's going on there? And again, we'll talk about the bullpen separately another time. I'm trying to find another thing I wanted to go through, and I should have bookmarked it, and I didn't. Oh, boy. Joe Cyan. Ooh, I like that. Joe Ryan. I was reading it as Joe Cyan. I was like, does he really like that shade of blue, or what am I missing there? Ooh, I think I found it. Yes. Oh, good stuff. Yeah, Christian Vasquez, that's going to be a huge addition, I think. Obviously a guy who is a legit major league catcher who has led helped lead multiple pitching staffs to World Series championships now. I mean, clearly, with the pitching the Astros had last year, I think you or me could have caught some games and they would have been okay. But not to take anything away from Christian Vasquez, I think he was a great addition. I think that was a position of need. I'm not as high on Ryan Jeffers as some other people are. I don't think I'm as high on Ryan Jeffers as the Twins have been. We'll put it that way. I think he's a very nice backup catcher. I think it's going to benefit him to be paired up with a veteran guy It did seem weird when you had Garver and Jeffers and then Rortvedt kind of coming up there. There wasn't. I think it's good to have a veteran catcher, and especially if it's your number one guy, which with Christian Vasquez is going to be. So I think he's going to help Ryan Jeffers. I think he is going to help the pitching staff. I think he's going to be great. That was a huge addition. All right. So what I've got pulled up here is the depth charts projections by team. So this is the starting pitchers by team, and just kind of to hammer home, kind of just to throw cold water. We want to be realistic here. We're excited. I was just pumping everybody up, talking about, how good things could be, but looking at it like it is, they do have the Twins projected to be the 16th rotation in baseball. I think I would tad at this point. I don't recall when the last time the Twins were, a middle of the pack rotation, and to see them ranked, ever so slightly above the Mariners, who do have some top of the rotation dudes and do have some guys that have some upside, possibly further than Joe Ryan, in my opinion, I think is nice. And it's because that depth, that rotation depth. And, if we look at it here too, I don't know if you can see this is a little bit small. So the Twins are ranked 16th, but things are pretty close. They're only one full win behind the Giants, which are, a handful of spots higher. So it's not like, it'd be impossible to see them reach into the top 10, even though I said they weren't in the top 10 rotation. We could maybe see with health, with some other things breaking right. Clearly, if we want to talk about the division, I think something that would shock people is that the White Sox are slightly ahead of the Twins, but both the White Sox and the Twins are above the Guardians on this projection here, which feels kind of crazy. We think about the Guardians, I think it's, they're pitching, they're young pitching, they're so good at developing young pitching. But if you look at it again, they do have Shane Bieber. This is a great example of kind of what I was talking about when you compare the Twins rotation with some other rotations. You got Shane Bieber, 4-win guy, miles ahead of anybody the Twins have, a clear number one starter, nobody in his class in the Twins. Tristan McKenzie at 2.7 more, it's in the neighborhood. He's still above the Twins guys, but it's in the neighborhood. And then you go down to Cal Quantrill, Aaron Savale, Zach Plesac, and everybody else. And it's like, these guys are not as good as the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the Twins. That's really the separator. And, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to worry about the postseason until, maybe July around the trade deadline. And we start to try to figure if the Twins are in position again, we start to try to figure out what they need. I'm not going to worry about that until then. This is a team and the Twins coming off back-to-back losing seasons. So we got to get over that hump. We got to get a winning team out there again. And obviously, they were a winning team for most of last year. But I'm fine with them building a regular season ready rotation. That is not a problem with me at this point. And some other people mentioned Bieber as a potential kind of slide back guy. I could see it. It's really hard to stay on top of the league, and that's the thing. For a lot of these guys, especially pitchers, kind of come and fade and have good years and then fade away and come back or, bounce around a little bit. And, Bieber's kind of reaching that stage of his career. I would bet against it. But, we'll see. But I think, a lot of people would be surprised by that. But the Twins are 16th and the Guardians are 19th in that. And of course, just to roll through the division, the Tigers and the Royals are not good projected. The Royals could be a fun team. They have a lot of really young guys that could kind of make them plucky and dangerous, but kind of is what it is there. I'm going to tuck that away for a sec. I'm going to pop that up there again just for a sec. There's something on pitcher list I wanted to pull up. I forgot about. Let's see. So yeah, if you like these baseball savant sliders, and I do too. I mean, they're so great at giving you a snapshot. I do want to kind of hesitate to invest everything in those. I think a lot of people kind of like to do that. And look at these pitcher list pages. I love these. These are new today. Again, they dropped today. We're pulling up Pablo Lopez just because I think he's the guy top of mind right now. But you can flip these graphs from their MLB rank percentage. You know, he's in the top 29th percentage in swinging strike rate. You can flip those to MLB averages because they're like, okay, he's at 14%. How high above the average is that? Oh, it's 11.7 for the league average. He's up at 14. I love these. I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm going to be spending a lot of time on Pitcher List, looking at a lot of this stuff. Again, they just dropped today, so I haven't had a ton of time to poke through things. But something that is really intriguing to me is this PLV, and I'm still grabbing a concept on where to find stuff. But I wanted to give an example. I don't know if I'm there yet. I don't know if I can find pitch by pitch is what I want. But point is, the main point is, there's a ton of data on these pitcher list player pages. I'm into it. I'm into it, man. I'm still, again, this just dropped today, this updated version. So I'm still kind of grasping everything they have to offer here. Yeah, if you're kind of curious at what kind of things I'm going to be that are catching my attention this year. I mean, they got video you can pull up by pitch. Yeah, so changeup. Let's just pull up boom, you get a random changeup that pops up here. Bam, beautiful. Just tons of data. And these are just for his changeup. We can get all these MLB ranks, MLB averages. So, to be honest, if you are like me and you want like an easy button, there's so much data. There's so much data these days. Especially for pitching, it's kind of coming different. There's a lot of new data out there in the last 5 years or so. There's so much of it that really hasn't come up in sort of mainstream analysis. I feel like I'm behind, just to be honest. I feel like I'm behind on the pitching stuff, and is kind of an easy button if you're feeling behind. I feel like obviously this is a lot to kind of drink in. If you're just seeing one of these pages for the first time, and your eyes can kind of go cross-eyed and think, my goodness, there's a ridiculous amount of stuff here, and there is. But once you kind of understand one of these type of pages, you can you have it down. They're the same for every player. So once you kind of get accustomed to how they have things sorted out, you're good to go. So I'll be spending a lot of time here, just to be honest. I know we're talking about starting pitching, but somebody mentioned Duran, and now I'm kind of curious to see how disgusting his page looks. Is it just, it's just red. It's just red. So I love these. Bob, come on, Bob. I think the Twins starting pitching staff had about an out or two less than. Actually, I'll pull it up. We'll talk about that. That's actually a good talking point. We'll discuss that. Give me just a moment here, and we can talk about starting pitching usage. Let's see. So in case you didn't see in the chat, Bob is talking about how Rocco Baldelli is a quick hook. How much are these starting pitchers going to be really throwing? Something to remember is that, the Twins had Dylan Bundy and Chris Archer in their rotation all season. That's a big time impact on how many innings or how many times you're going to go through the order. So the Twins, okay, sure, they are toward the bottom here on innings pitched per game start, right? But they averaged 4.8 innings per start. League average was 5.1. They were 0.3 innings below league average. They were an out below league average. And 1 out. So it's not as if the Twins have some crazy that they're just completely below anything that anybody else is doing, which I think is often how it's portrayed by some people. Well, they'll go to pitches per game start as well. So the Twins, once again, at the bottom pretty much with Tampa Bay. But 78, the league average was 84. So 6 pitches. 6 pitches. The Twins, on average, pulled their starting pitchers 6 pitches earlier than league average. And this was with Dylan Bundy and Chris Archer in the rotation and a bunch of other guys. A bunch of, when Cole Sands goes out there and gets shelled and has whatever his shortest outing was as a starter, that factor is in here too. Teams just don't let guys pitch that deep into games anymore. The numbers have always supported the third time through the order penalty. So, that's a thing. And Dobnak came up. Somebody said, they didn't give Dobnak the bag. What was that? What did he get? I forget. Yeah, it was a 5-year, 9.25 extension, 9.25 million. That included 3 club option years. So it was a weird and a bunch of performance, escalators. So, certainly looks, I'm not trying to say that that doesn't look like a misstep at this point, that Dobnak extension. Certainly looks like that was completely unnecessary. Oh, man. Noah, that's a great question. What do you think Connor Prelip's workload will look like? Honestly, I was kind of surprised that he threw at the draft combine, mainly because I didn't think he had much to. I think he had more to lose than to gain. But he pitched great at the draft combine. He looked tremendous. So, and I think he knew that. I think he knew he was going to look great. So he didn't feel like he had anything to lose. Oh, I don't know how much they usually have guys like that throw. But he threw like 30 innings in all of his college career. Obviously part of that was due to COVID. He was in school during the canceled season, but man, I can't imagine it's going to be that much. I can't imagine it's going to. I'm trying to think of who. Like, how much did Blaine Enlow throw last year in the minor leagues? About 50, 60 innings probably sounds about right for Connor Prelip. I think that's about how much they had Marco Raya throw last year, too, if I'm remembering that correctly. Oh, whoa. Hold up. That would be my guess. So, oh no, Raya threw 65. So yeah, 50, 60 innings. That kind of seems like, and that means he's probably not going to, break camp anywhere. But who knows? Again, I don't, he looked great. He's healthy. We're talking about Connor Prelip. He's been throwing. I'm curious with that, and that was something I was thinking about during the shutdown. Just because guys didn't throw innings doesn't mean they're not throwing. I imagine Connor Prelip's been throwing. I'd imagine he probably was throwing some, simulated games. So it's like, it's not as if they're ramping him up from zero. That's a great question. I don't know the answer, but obviously that'll be a thing to watch. I'll put it this way. I don't think Connor Prelip will throw enough to be in contention for Twins minor league pitcher of the year. that'll be the way I frame that answer. Yeah, and Prelip, Liam notes that Prelip's been healthy for a while. So yeah, it's sort of, I don't know how they take that into account because he's been throwing for a while. A dark horse prospect I think might debut in 2023. As far as the pitching goes, that's kind of tricky. They've built up the rotation really well. A lot of guys debuted last year. I might have to pull up some resources here to jog my memory. Let's see. The Twins did not change pitching coaches, but Wes Johnson left last year, so that was the change in the middle of the year. What a weird, I haven't thought about that in a while. What a weird situation that is. Yeah, Brent Hedrick would be, the good answer to who's most likely to debut this year, because he's already on the 40-man roster. And, we'll plug, go over, check out Talking Twins on YouTube. That channel has actually an interview with Brent Hedrick. Big, tall, left-handed starting pitcher. I actually probably have him too low, to be honest, on my rankings. I bumped him up and kind of thought, boy, he could be better than that. He had a snag, and he really got back on track and looked great to end the year last year. This is Brent Hedrick we're talking about. All right. Yeah, Woods Richardson already debuted. Varland already debuted. David Festa, I don't see him like jumping up that much this upcoming season, but it's possible. Ronnie Henriquez, obviously, he also debuted last year. So there's a lot of the guys debuted. Matt Cantorino is hurt. Cole Sands debuted last year. Jordan Balazovic, I mean, if he might get taken off the 40-man roster if he doesn't debut this year. You can't leave guys out. We saw this with Blaine Enlow. You can't just have guys on the 40-man roster not being able to contribute to your major league team. You're just, at a certain point, you're going to get so many injuries that it's not going to happen. But hey, Cody Lawyerson, there's my guy. Cody Lawyerson, if you watched that prospect video or watched a lot of the highlight videos, that I love this guy. Really caught my attention. And I do think he's probably more than likely going to end up in the bullpen. So that sort of helps his kind of case in this picture, because that's the thing. When you're talking about guys who might debut or guys who might contribute to the Twins, it's not always about the player. It's about what opportunity is going to open up on the big club. And Cody Lawyerson has both started and relieved, and I don't think he's a guy. I think he's 25, so he's not really a guy that they're going to worry about like screwing up his development. Like he's basically where he needs to be. Was in Double-A last year. Throws weird, man. Throws so weird. The velo isn't crazy at all, but guys do not seem to see his fastball at all. So I could see him sort of, and he's sort of a perfect, you think about like, day after a doubleheader and you need a guy for length. Cody Laurison's like the perfect, because he's kind of a rubber arm too. He seemed to work in a lot of different roles or a lot of different situations last year. Nothing seemed to bother him. So yeah, I could see Cody Lawyerson kind of cracking that day. Like, let's say, the day you need a guy, but Louis Varland pitched yesterday. He's not available. That's sort of one of those situations where just sort of the perfect opportunity arises for a guy like that. See, on the pitching side, I could see that. I mean, to be honest, so I also could see Cody Lawyerson just completely hit the wall and just like, well, the magic's gone. I'm always going to think that with those guys that throw, 90, 91, 92, it's like, man, that's sort of part of the thing with Joe Ryan I think of a lot too. It's like, this guy's magic, man. And he is mad. Is that fastball of Joe Ryan's magic? People can't see that fastball. But yeah, I think we'll talk about this more when we talk about hitters. But Edouard Julien's going to play more on the Twins than I think people realize. I think Edouard Julien's going to play again, a lot of it depends on what happens at the big club above them, what opportunities open up. But yeah, I think they're going to prioritize getting him on the big club. All right. I think that was probably everything I wanted to cover. Samuel, yeah, Emilio Pagan for Twins All-Star. Yeah, I like it. I like it. We'll talk about the bullpen again. And, if you missed that part, we're going to wrap up here pretty soon. But this is live stream season. I think once a week, we're going to just hang out. We're going to tackle a aspect of the team. I think next week we'll do bullpen unless you have something, if there's like they sign a guy or something else happens, maybe we'll switch up the order here. Basically, we'll do the same kind of thing. This is always, you guys always bring up good stuff. I love that. So Ninja Colin asks if the pitch clock will affect Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray is a slow worker. I don't remember last year, but I remember when I looked this up a couple of years ago, when thinking about the pitch clock before I was in the minor leagues, he was one of like the 2 slowest starting pitchers. His pace is very slow, Sonny Gray. And again, I don't know if he started to kind of pick it up last year or not. I'd have to look it up, but very slow pace for Sonny Gray. If that might be a problem. I am hyped. I am so excited for the pitch clock. It is going to be amazing. If you didn't watch minor league baseball last year, you are in for a treat. A lot of people, traditionalists, people don't really like change in baseball, man. This is going to be good. This is going to be good. I get it. Baseball doesn't have a clock. That's sort of part of the beauty of the game. But unfortunately, these guys have taken it too far. The hitters too. The hitters too have taken it too far. It goes both ways. And the pace of the game has just gotten too slow, especially at the major league level. This is going to be so good for baseball. But I do think that might be hard times for Sonny Gray. I don't know. We'll see. It's a big adjustment to make. It's a lot faster than he had pitched in the past. Again, I wish I had that handy. Maybe I could track that down real quick. Let's see. That is on Baseball Savant. But yeah, I know as of a couple of years ago, he was one of the slower paced starting pitchers in baseball. Let's see if I remember where to track that. We won't spend too much time on this. I don't think I remember. All right. Well, that's maybe another discussion for another time. But yes, I do think that, I'll put it this way too. Like, I think the pitch clock might have more impact on starting pitchers that people aren't really thinking of than the shift will impact hitters that people are thinking a lot. You hear a lot of that about like a Joey Gallo, Max Kepler. Oh, the shift change. This guy's going to be, way better because of the shift change. I don't know, man. I think the pitch clock is going to be a big impact, and it will impact some guys. And I think it's going to be tough to know whom we're going to hear in spring training. We're going to hear in spring training. I did find out today that the World Baseball Classic will not have a pitch clock, will not have shift rules. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Makes sense in some regard because a lot of the guys playing in the World Baseball Classic are not major leaguers. A lot of these guys play in other international leagues that don't have those rules. But on the other hand, the World Baseball Classic is a Major League Baseball entity. It's put on by Major League Baseball, so I thought maybe there was a chance they'd do it. But I think they're going to try to just keep it simple. I'm really excited for the WBC. We could talk about Correa not doing that for a sec. It's just so silly how that blew up. I think makes perfect sense. Perfect sense for Correa not to be playing WBC. Yeah, and Joe mentioned, if you watch games from back in the day, they didn't need a clock back in the day. The guys had a good pace, and there wasn't any need for a clock back then. yeah, it's gotten out of hand. And yeah, if you look at, I think I looked it up in a game from like 1970, average like 2.5 hours, which is like unthinkable these days. And they didn't have to do anything. There wasn't any, and obviously there's been some TV stuff and like I think commercial breaks in between inning breaks have lengthened because of commercials maybe in that time, but so there's other factors that have baked into that, but I'm really, really excited. Really excited for the pitch clock. I think it's going to be great. It was great in the minor leagues. It shaved like 20 to 25 minutes off the minor league games. It's going to be an adjustment. And yeah, I think if I could bet on, a Twins story to come out in early spring training, Sonny Gray being pissed off about the pitch clock would be a pretty quick one that I would say I'm putting my money on. Yeah, I don't think he's going to like that. But let's wrap this thing up. Almost went an hour tonight. Thank you so much for hanging out. Again, we're going to be doing this weekly. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much. I want to also thank the channel members. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. All the members. These are the premium channel members. Really could not have done that prospect huge project without channel membership and just kind of knowing that it's back there. And, I was sharing those highlights throughout that process. So channel members got early access to all that stuff. I just posted a blog post to members. Was it yesterday that I wrote? I might have wrote this 5 years ago. It was in my Google Docs and I found it. It was just a summary of like the contraction era. It's a big, long post about kind of that whole, and actually the strike era of Minnesota Twins baseball. Whatever project I wrote that for didn't end up coming to fruition, and I didn't even realize I had it anymore. So I'm just throwing whatever over there. So I'm trying to make sure there's some good value going to members as well. So check that out. It starts at $1.99 a month, and really collectively really makes a big difference. So anyway, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll talk again soon.